What's wrong with the stupid TV? There's nothing to watch. Oops, never mind. I found something. All right, welcome guys to the last rewind, and please hit those like buttons so the algorithm will go to work and help push this video out to the forefront. And today, what we're going to talk about, as you probably see on the bottom of the screen, it's going to be LeBron James and Stephen A. Smith. There was a bit of a confrontation last night at the New York Knicks versus the LA Lakers game, with the Lakers won in overtime thanks to Luka and LeBron. But during the game, at some point, LeBron walked over to the $100 million man, Stephen A. Smith, and had a bit of a confrontation, something that could be described as Will Smith versus Chris Rock-esque. Because LeBron James is a very large man compared to Stephen A. Smith. And I don't know if that scared Stephen A. I don't know if he pumps Kool-Aid or blood in his heart and through his veins. But wasn't much said. It looked like, keep my son's name out your mouth. And Stephen A. may have said some words back. Then LeBron went on his way. Stephen A. sat down. But it's been all but confirmed that LeBron was going at Stephen A. about comments that he has said about his son on his show First Take and possibly on the Stephen A. Smith podcast. So Stephen A. responded this morning. We may play a little bit of that. And, explain his side of the story and how he felt. He understands where LeBron is coming from as a father. But his anger is misdirected because he's never said anything personally about Bronny James. And from what I've ascertained from, previous shows, I don't see that as being the case. I don't think Stephen A. has gone at his son as Stephen A. has gone at Kwame Brown. He made personal attacks on Kwame Brown, called him garbage, a scrub, not fit to be in the NBA, some other choice words. And as you've seen, Kwame Brown has responded in later years, almost like, maybe 2 decades later, and he's made a career off of it. And, pretty interesting podcast. Where he speaks his mind and talks about a bevy of subjects. But he got his get back at Stephen A. But those were personal attacks. But what Stephen A. has done with Bronny, he's been very careful, I've thought. Because Stephen A. has a lot of relationships, I swear, in the league that with everybody he's best friends with. He has somehow he knows the inner workings of how each player's family is, when they had the baby, when was the christening, when they got married. He knows all these things. He's best friends with everybody. And it seems like that's the same thing with LeBron James. And so I think he has been very careful with how he's talked about Bronny James. He's only talked about the skill set. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Stephen A. Smith is a journalist. A journalist is supposed to report on the inner workings on the genre they cover. Now, I know there are some journalists that go outside the box and they cover, things in their personal life, what's happening in their love life, what's happening in their political life and stuff like that. And that's outside the box. I don't think he has done that with Bronny James. He's talked about his skill set. And if he were not to talk about his skill set, what else would there be to talk about? And LeBron James, for the most part. Yeah, there's been some things, of course, where he's talked about, LeBron James, the political life, his home life, which is most of the time has been glowing. Most of the time he says great things about LeBron James. It's not too many times where he says negative things about him at all. It's only when he comes and talks about, the Jordan versus LeBron debate. And even then, by naming him, the number 2 greatest player in the world, which is not a huge slight in the least bit. Out of the thousands of people that have played in the NBA, he's named you number 2. It's not a slight, but they view that as if he just called him the B word. when he says, "Oh, you're number 2 to Michael Jordan." You never hear Michael Jordan go off like this if someone says he's not the greatest or whatever like that. But you got all these media pundits that are behind LeBron James that, come at Jordan and even talk about his personal life at sometimes as a way to say he's not the GOAT. They'll say stuff like, "Oh, well, because he doesn't take a political stance. So somehow this relates to his basketball skills." And, LeBron doesn't say anything negative about that. But pretty much for the most part, Stephen A. has been speaking glowingly when it comes to LeBron James. Now, I don't have a problem with LeBron. I don't have a problem with LeBron coming at the defense of his son if they are out of pocket with how they're talking about his son. But when they're talking about the skill set, this is their job. The NBA, again, is supposed to be a meritocracy. It doesn't always end up like that because, politics is starting to creep in more and more in the NBA. So it's supposed to be a meritocracy. We're supposed to talk about the worst versus the best in with each player or each team, that for that matter. And that's exactly what Stephen A. and all these other journalists, for the most part, are doing. Can understand when you're saying if people were calling him, names, negative names, like Skip Bayless may call, Westbrook negative names, about his shooting prowess or lack thereof. If you come after that, then I can see what you're talking about. Like things like when Skip was talking about Chris Bosh, I think he was calling him Bosh Bice or something like that, some nickname he gave him. That's talking about the man's manhood. I can understand that. But when you're just talking about the skill level, then I don't get what you're saying, because you're saying he can't do his job as a journalist. And then people act like this is something that's brand new. They've been talking about people's skill set since the media joined the NBA. My God, when it was the 70s, they were talking about how it was such a drug-filled league and the ratings were horrible. Nobody wants to watch the sport. It used to be on tape delay. I'm not old enough to know that, but I've read the history of it, and it wasn't all rainbows and sunshines. All sunshine and rainbows. I got that backwards. But there were people would talk negative about, people talk about Magic, tragic Magic. People talk about, was Jordan even good enough to carry a team to the finals at one point? These were things before they actually accomplished things that people talked about. So this is nothing new. And they also talked about the personal life. They talked about Jordan's personal life. So this is, again, nothing new. When people speak about Bronny James, though, and they're like, well, he shouldn't be talking about a child like that. Bronny James is 20. He could go in the army right now and kill somebody for free, legally. He is 1 year away from being able to pay for alcohol. He is not a child anymore. He can be set up for criticism like the rest of the world can. As soon as you can pretty much go get a job, you're set up for criticism. You can do that when you're a child. Actually, you can get criticism as a child. It's just when it's out of pocket. When you throw insults, that's when it's different. Now, you're a grown man. You don't throw no insults towards me. At a job, you criticize the job, not the person. So I get that. I have not seen, unless I may have been blind to it, I have not seen where Stephen A. Smith has criticized Bronny James as he has Kwame Brown. Now that you could say was out of pocket, because you did criticize him as a man, as a person, not his skill set. You did that too, but you went extra, So I get that part. But I don't get where these new players, it's just like you cannot say anything about them whatsoever. Now you got a lot of these players that are getting their own podcast and they're saying outlandish things. Like Shaq the other day. Shaq, Hall of Famer, great player. He said, and I don't mind if you have a conversation about it, but he said Steph Curry belongs in the GOAT conversation. And no one wants to give him any pushback. That's what I don't like. It's the pushback. That's how debate happens. That's what we do in barbershops. That's how we get to talking about who's the greatest team, greatest player, who's the worst team, worst player, who's the greatest dunker, who's the greatest shooter. This is how we have conversation, by having some pushback and bringing up new ideas for why I should agree or not agree with your person that you pick. But the new age media, which I'm saying is these new players coming in, they don't want anyone talking bad about them. At least their era anyway, because people like Gilbert Arenas don't want nobody talking about bad about the new players, but he talks about the 90s players. So a lot of times it's just the era now that players don't want people to talk bad about. They don't care about talking about the past. So like, JJ Redick, there was plumbers in the 60s and 50s and 70s and on. He doesn't mind that part. But when we talk about today's players, we're just caught up in nostalgia. That's why we can't appreciate the players today. That's the narrative he likes to draw. Don't talk about today's players because you're caught up in nostalgia. Or we could just may not like today's NBA product. It's like McDonald's, I'll be one of the people to say, I remember when McDonald's had low prices where you can go get a cheeseburger for $1. Now you got to pay $4 to get one now. Is that because of nostalgia I'm mad? Or is it because I would like to pay a reasonable price for a cheap cheeseburger? Is the NBA really only about nostalgia? Or is it because we don't like the way the offense and defense is being played nowadays? And we want it back. But we don't want anybody to criticize anybody. And I don't agree with that. And I don't think that's what Stephen A. was doing. LeBron James, again, has every right to defend his son. He can even defend his son when he talks about the skill set. Like, hey, actually, Bronny is improving on his shot making. He's improving on his dribbling. He can come back and say that. But to get to the point where he's saying, don't say anything about his son, that means you don't want them to say anything positive either. Because you got to take the good with the bad, because you're playing in a very, very public sport. This is about as bad as Kevin Durant's take saying, he wishes the fans just wouldn't boo. If they really felt a certain way, then they should just walk out of the building. So they should pay their hard-earned money, thousands of dollars, because the tickets are astronomical now with the prices depending on the team, and just leave. And you would feel that more. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't feel that more because you're still getting paid regardless. You'd be happy with it because now you don't have to deal with any criticism. And it's like no player today wants to deal with that at all. Stephen A., he went to college for many years to prepare for this type of job, where it is to criticize people. You see, he's getting in the political arena now with his new podcast. So he's talking about a bevy of subjects. And yeah, you would like for you to be able to talk about politics without talking about the personal life, but that's not the way it is either. And I could say politics is not a meritocracy quite like the NBA is, where we just want to talk about the best players that are put in the sport based on skill. But that seems to be now disappearing now. Because we know Bronny James was not put there in his position based on skill. It was on nepotism. And again, I don't have a problem with nepotism if the person is well qualified for the job. Nepotism doesn't work for you being a doctor. If your dad gets you a job working as a heart surgeon, but your son doesn't know if the heart is on the left side, right side, or in the middle anywhere, then nepotism needs to go away. Now, if your son is like Doogie Howser or House MD or someone from Grey's Anatomy or ER, then yeah, by all means, use nepotism to your advantage. Got no problem with that. Got no problem with that at all. But this is not the case with Bronny James. Bronny James' skill level is not where it should be. And we know that's why he got hired. So he's opened himself up to criticism. Not Bronny, but LeBron. And that's what I think Stephen A has come at LeBron James about it's like, why would you put your son in this situation knowing he's not ready? He's not ready to be a professional basketball player. But you put him in this situation knowing, you're smart. You've been in media since you were 18 years old. And you could say before that too, where people were calling you the chosen one on Sports Illustrated. You know how the media is. A lot of times people will call you the most criticized player of all time in any sports. And if that is true, then you know how the media works. And you know if anyone who's attached to you is going to be attached to that same criticism. So you have to be careful where you put your children at. Because yes, that could affect them. But again, we're not talking about an 8-year-old. We're talking about a 20-year-old. Let people reminisce about going to their first job or how many jobs you had by the time you were 20. And you got criticized for the job you were doing. Did your parents come up to the job and reprimand the boss? And I'm talking about if they were talking about your skill level, not coming out of pocket and calling you the B word or whatever because you're stupid or idiot, those type of things. If they were just talking about your skill level and you got written up, did your parent, mom, dad, uncle, grandparent come up to the job and reprimand the boss? Probably not. Probably not. Not unless you're a mama's boy or something. And you can't just do any wrong in your mom's eyesight. This is the same thing with the NBA. If he confronted, maybe if he confronted Skip Bayless, I would understand that. Stephen A, I think he was out of pocket with that. I don't think that made any sense to come at him like that. And you could have and Stephen A said this, you have his number. You could have had a conversation and you knew when you confronted him on that Lakers court, you know it was going to go viral. Because people are always watching the celebrities and what they're doing, how they're reacting, who they're sitting with, what they're wearing. People knew Stephen A was there. And that's why that camera caught the confrontation between you and Stephen A. People knew what was going to be said the next day. And you knew that. You knew you weren't trying to have a conversation. You were going to say your piece and move on. I bet you there will never be a conversation with them. Not at least this year. Maybe after he retires. But I don't think there's going to be a conversation no time soon. Because I don't think he wanted that. I don't think he wants to be told he might be wrong. And to me, that's what real men do. We have conversations. And based off of that conversation, you tell me without a threatening manner if I'm wrong, and I rebut. And we try not to come to blows based off of that. But if you try to put me in a situation where you just yell and tell me what you think and then you walk away, that's not what men are supposed to do. Unless you just really wanted to kill this cat, man. I don't know how angry he was. He looked like he was pretty pissed off. Stephen A said whatever he said, it could not be said on the FCCC airwaves because they would have got blocked or whatever. But that's my thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys thought about this confrontation. Was LeBron James wrong for sticking up for his son, which I don't think he was. I just think he's wrong for why he was sticking up for his son. And if you think Stephen A was right for what he had to say about his son, Bronny James, over the past few weeks or a few months since he joined the NBA, let me know in the comments. And please, again, make sure hit the like and subscribe button. And I will see you on the next episode of The Last Rewind. Peace.